How have I just came I'm just a year and a half here. How are you almost a year and a
Well,
half?
I'm kind of in
You're
between
you're
a
rounding
year
up.
and I am rounding up.
You're
I'm
rounding up
rounding up.
quite a lot there. Um,
Which
because
I'm allowed to do.
I just came here. I just crossed a year and a half,
Okay.
and I was here.
So pardon, a year and 3 months.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that
Good.
better?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's better.
Okay.
Merry Christmas and welcome to Your Why Season 3, Episode 5. Today we have Katie Eichler. That's how you say her last name, right?
Yes.
Eichler. Okay, good. And she's here to talk about Epworth League and all that they're doing for young adults around Houston. We're super excited to have her on. Today, returning as the co-host, we have Nicole Naring, aka my mother. Super excited to have her on. And as you can tell, this is the Christmas episode of Your Why. We have our Christmas themed mugs. We've got the attire on to celebrate with you all. So hopefully, hey, if it's around the holidays, listen to it with the family. Turn it on, have a good conversation, get a good cup of Joe or hot chocolate, maybe some you or me coffee, and listen to an episode. So, Mom,
Yes.
Nicole, do you want to kind of give everyone an introduction of who you are and what you do at Chapelwood?
Yes. So I am Nicole Naring, and I am the Director of Women's Ministry at Chapelwood. I've been in this position now for almost a year and a half. So it's been exciting. Starting new programs, continuing with programs we've had. It's been a full year with the challenges we've had, but it's been a year of connection. So it's been really great.
How have I'm just a year and a half here. How are you almost a year and a half?
I'm kind of
You're
in between
you're
a
rounding
year
up.
and I am rounding up.
You're rounding
I'm
up
rounding
quite a lot there.
Which I'm allowed to do.
I just came here. I just crossed a year and a half.
Okay.
And I was here.
So pardon, a year and 3 months.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that
good.
better?
Yeah, that's better. Okay. So like always, we have some list of 187 icebreaker questions. So I'm going to ask you a number. I'm going to ask you that icebreaker question.
Okay, I'm going to pick number 4.
Number 4. What is something you want badly but can't afford right now?
Oh gosh, something I want badly but I can't afford. I would love to have a butler.
A butler.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you like a butler?
Because, somebody like when you go on a cruise and you just walk in and everything's already put into place. So now with having all my college kids back home, I would like somebody that would just put everything into place because it seems like everything is out of place right now. So whatever you can call that person, that's what I want.
Okay. Good to know.
Right now that person's me. So I want somebody else to take that over.
So you want someone to take your job.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do.
I can understand that. All right. Well, like I said in the intro, we are Katie Eichler. Katie Eichler is going to be on to talk about Epworth League and all that they're doing for young adults. As a young adult, it was really cool just sitting down and hearing her talk about, just someone that has a heart for the age group, the demographic that you're in, and finding ways to reach them. At times I feel like young adults can be missed in the church because it is, she hit on this point, and I thought it was a good point of like, you have youth ministry, and then all of a sudden it goes from youth ministry, and then you have college ministry, and then you have just adult ministry. And that is such a wide range of people that it's hard to minister directly to them. And so, I think that what they're doing is really cool.
Yeah, especially because you think of a lot of that age group. You're moving to a new city, a new job, and they don't have anywhere to connect. They're kind of leaving their college friends, their families, and they need that connection still. It can be very lonely. So yes, very much needed ministry.
For sure. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and jump into that interview, and we'll catch you back here in a couple minutes. We are here now with Katie Eichler. Did I say your last name right, Katie?
Eichler.
Eichler. Okay. Katie Eichler. All right, Katie, do you want to kind of give us a little intro to who you are and a little introduction there?
Sure. So I'm Katie Eichler. I am pastor to children, youth, and families at St. Mark's United Methodist Church in the Heights. And I'm also the director of the Epworth League, which is a ministry that is a citywide ministry for 18 to 35-year-olds that's anchored in United Methodist churches, including St. Mark's, but not only at St. Mark's. We are in multiple different anchor churches, but that's why I find myself here today, is because of Epworth League. So, yeah.
Yeah, Epworth League was something that I found out about. I think it was in a newsletter, and I remember I got to meet with you, a couple other people, to talk about Epworth League and about Chapelwood and serving and everything like that a little bit before the pandemic happened. And so, yeah, I'm excited to have you on and kind of talk about what Epworth League is and what it's doing in the city and everything like that. So you kind of gave us a little bit, but can you give us just a 3,000-foot view of what Epworth League is? And
Absolutely.
for the person who doesn't know what that means.
Sure. So if I was going to give you just like the spiel, just like this is the tag of who we are. Epworth League is a citywide ministry for 18 to 35-year-olds that provides community, fosters discipleship, and equips leaders to love their neighbors and serve God and the church. And but that's like just the tag, right? But if we were going to, if I was going to tell you a little bit more about it, what I would say is like that we know that isolation is a big deal for young adults in our city, and I think that's especially true in urban areas where you come for your job right after school, but maybe this isn't where you were from, and maybe you don't know that many people. And we think that the church has something to offer in the way of community. But Chapelwood's a big place and has a lot of resources to be able to provide community to lots of different kinds of groups. But there are a lot of churches that have a hard time getting the critical mass to be able to really provide that kind of community to a group and have the staff support to be able to provide that on a consistent basis. So we've heard stories over and over about the church trying to offer something to the young adults, and it may be going well for a little while, or they had a Sunday school class that was meeting for a little while, but then it kind of flickered out. And so I actually learned about the historic Epworth League, which when I was in a class in seminary in United Methodist history. And the historic Epworth League was a group anchored in United Methodist churches from 1889 through like the 1940s-ish. That if you were a Methodist church that's about that old, you probably had one in your church. They were thriving communities of discipleship, of leadership, of service, and then they were connected to one another because the Methodist Church is a connectional place, and so they were connected to one another through retreats, through conventions, international conventions, and lots of other ways where a league from this church would be connected to another church's league. And then in the 1940s, it went away, and for lots of reasons, a big part of which was the church investing in college ministry, and they're driving a deeper wedge between what youth ministry and young adult ministry was, and just saying, okay, well, a 23-year-old's an adult and they can just be fully enveloped into the life of the adult church, but not offering anything specific for them. And I think that the church has struggled ever since then with that age group, with really investing in and cultivating community in this age group. And so we recognize that that's a need, and we try to meet it. And so we do that mainly through our league night on Tuesday night, which is a gathering where we worship together, where we eat together, and where we hang out, but also through recognizing that the city offers tons of wonderful, fun things. We love to live in Houston. We kind of see it as a palette of entertainment, and so we offer lots of social events across the city as well. And then we're anchored in United Methodist churches, and so we have small groups that meet in those churches.
Yeah, that's so cool. And, to hear as a young adult, that is really cool to hear that, someone is out there thinking about, because it is, the point that really stuck out to me is that, like, yeah, you turn 23, all of a sudden you graduate college and you're supposed to be in the same point of life as people who are married and have kids or have been in the workforce for um, 10, 15 years. That's something that, like, coming out of college and entering the workforce, that's to me, it's been one of the more dramatic shifts in my own life, even like more than going from high school to college, like going to college to, the workforce and being truly independent and everything like that. And so it's cool to hear how that process started. And so can we're here at your why, we obviously like to ask the question why. And I think you've already kind of nailed it with that introduction to Epworth League. But what was that? You talked about the historic of Epworth League has been around since the 40s and all this stuff in the United Methodist Church. What was that recently? What was that, what was that stirring that made you and other people think, okay, this is something that needs to come back now? What were y'all seeing? And what was God doing there that kind of made you think about that?
Sure. So I had learned about it in that class, right? But when and then really, I wrote a paper on it, and just in my research and working on that, I woke up one morning during that process with just a fully fleshed out like vision of this is how this could work in Houston. This isn't just something that had to exist in history and is now gone. Like, this has potential to work right now in Houston, and this is how it would work. And I say, like, I woke up with a fully fleshed vision, but I don't think that, I just came up with something really clever, right? Like, I think that God had begun to stir something in our city and in our churches because there was a need, and I think that I just get to be a part of that and a vessel to that. But at the time, like I said, I have a full-time job that doesn't really have 18 to 35-year-olds just buckled down in. It's not like the focus of it is now. It's part of one of my focuses now, but it definitely wasn't at the time. And so I just stuck it in a drawer and was like, that's a cool idea. No, but this isn't the time for that. And then a couple years later, so we launched in September of last year, of 2019, but probably in the late spring of last year, a couple of things happened where I got to either experience or be a part of the stories of people that really had this just highlighted for me why this is necessary, why this is needed. And one was that a woman came into my church who did not live there, does not live in Houston, and she was in town and she just needed a place to pray. And so our secretary was like, absolutely, go pray in the sanctuary. But then she called me to go, check in. And she was in town because her son she was putting her son in rehab that day. He had been this like top-notch college student who had worked so hard to have his good grades and was very well connected socially. And he moved to Houston to a dream job from somewhere in the upper Midwest and he loved his job, but it worked him to death. And then it was like he went from his job to his empty apartment at night, and there was nothing to do. And it was a great apartment that's sold with like all of the great amenities that, you can go meet people at the pool and at the gym, and nobody ever uses them. They only just go in and out of their apartment and not talk to their neighbor. And it had just taken its toll on him. And so just sitting with that woman and praying with that woman, I wondered what it would have looked like. She just passed our church on the street. Like, we didn't know her. We didn't know her son. But I wondered what it would have looked like if we had known her son and if we had given him a place to be. And then a very similar story, a student that I had been her youth director, had gone away to college, had moved back to Houston, has this great, wonderful, awesome job as a young professional, but had, before you have all these ways to connect to people that are just circumstantial. You make friends just because you're in school together, or you're in dance together, or you're in, you have activities or organizations that just join you to one another. And then once you're out of college, especially if you work in an environment that isn't all young adults, like, finding friends is really hard. And she, same story. She really loved everything about her job and was living, but she was terribly lonely. And she was so lonely that she came to church. And that was very telling for me. And so just in talking to her, I thought, there has to be a better way to connect people to one another and to give people a community to be rooted in. And the church, I think, has something to say to loneliness and to provide community for people. And so those were kind of the whys that began our journey. And so just through conversation partners and realizing that this was not just an isolated couple of stories, we gathered young adults and started to dream in the summer of last year and said, what could this look like? What would you like the Epworth League to look like if we rebirthed it in Houston? And here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's really close to my heart hearing you speak, because I have three boys that fall, or three sons, I should say, that fall in that age group. And I see those struggles of being able to connect. But it's interesting how that age group, different things draw them, in. So what is it mainly when I hear loneliness, but what are some other things that you think draw that age group into this ministry?
Well, that's one of the things that we love about just the way that we're structured, is because there's so many different ways that you can connect to the Epworth League, right? So if you say you just you were a church kid and you just aren't any, just haven't found one now, and you walked into St. Paul's on a Sunday morning and were of this age group and started asking who were people that you could connect to, they would direct you to the Epworth League small group right there, right? So you could go to that small group that meets in that church or meets virtually at that church right now, and meet people and that are part of the Epworth League that could connect you to our other things, right? But that's, maybe you've never walked into a church before, right? And so that's one of our, or maybe you have, but that's not what you're feeling right now. But so that's where our social events, I think, are really helpful. When in non-pandemic times, we had a trivia team that met every single week. They were very good. They won many times. And so that's a thing that you might connect through trivia, and the friendships that you make there, you may start coming to League Night or an anchor group. But you may never, right? You may just make friends at the trivia group and go to the trivia group, and that's that. The end goal is not to take people from trivia and get them engaged everywhere, right? That's only the end goal if that's what you want the end goal to be. We want you to have community, and so if that is all you're looking for, that's an okay thing too. And the other thing that we talk a lot about is with our social things that we do, is that it's really intimidating, especially as you're making friends, to say I don't know you at all, or I barely know you, and so we may hang out at work, but I may feel really uncomfortable being like, hey, the Miller Outdoor Theater is doing this cool show that I'm interested in. Do you want to go with me? That's a big risk thing to ask. I would feel risky doing that if I didn't know for sure that oh yeah, that'd be something you'd be into and you want to do that. But it's a different thing to say, hey, I'm going to this thing with the Epworth League where I already know there are going to be people there, and I already have met them. So I can go to that and know, I can go to this thing, and I'm not just going to show up at the Miller Outdoor Theater by myself. There'll be people that I can sit with and connect to and be a part of a group. But I can also ask, a friend that I barely know, hey, do you want to go do this thing with me with this group? And then it's not so awkward, right? So we try to create lots of different kinds of experiences. And our basically, if you're a part of the Epworth League and you want something to be a social event, you can be in charge of it. A thing that we say is leaguers are leaders, right? And so if you're into something and you want it to be a social event, we'll make it happen. We've sent people to the Renaissance Festival. We've had just a couple, a few weeks ago, we had an Among Us game night over Zoom. So there's lots of different ways that can look. But there's connecting to the Epworth League can happen at a lot of different ways or different levels.
Yeah. Wow, that's so neat. And you just really encapsulate it. Really, you've done a good job of explaining everything to the why behind it started, and now even talking about like what it looks like on a practical level of just getting people involved and all the different ways that And you're so right because there are so many different interests out there, and being able to be a place that all those interests can be met at different levels, and that people at for any reason can feel comfortable coming and joining and being a part of it is really neat. Um, so we're going to move on to Katie a little bit into your personal story, and you've kind of again, it's interesting because it feels like it's very obviously Epworth is you felt the need to bring it up again, and this was something that God was obviously moving in your life and placing on your heart to bring back into the Houston area from after its long hiatus. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, but before that, I'm going to talk a little bit about our sponsor. The Your Why podcast is sponsored by You Are Me Coffee, specialty coffee with a purpose. The goal of You Are Me is to partner growers and millers in Meru, Kenya, with consumers around the world. Before You Are Me, supply chain limitations discouraged locals from cultivating their coffee. We've changed that by eliminating valueless transactions. The other key to You Are Me is ensuring that farmers and millers are compensated with a living wage. We like to think this is the fairest of trade. I'm drinking You Are Me right now. I have been going nonstop over the past couple of weeks on my seminary finals, and You Are Me has been helping me pull those long nights. It's very good coffee that gives you energy. You can go to youaremecoffee.com to get yourself some. The letters URME coffee.com. That's where you need to go. Their coffee is grown in volcanic soil in Meru, Kenya. They have K-Cups medium to light roast, whole bean coffee medium to light roast, and limited edition HBS barrel-aged whole bean coffee. It is good coffee that goes well if you like to maybe make some coffee cocktails. Maybe that's your thing. That HBS barrel-aged whole bean coffee is really good for that stuff. So they're roasting weekly now, and you can expect your order to be shipped out within the week that you order. So go ahead and get yourself some. And all right, moving on. So, Katie, just kind of like what I was saying before, it seems like your story, like obviously with you being the one to kind of bring this back, in Epworth League, and these stories and these interactions that you had. Can you kind of give us more of your story that kind of brought you to this point, to where you're at now, and all that with the Epworth League?
Sure. Well, personally, I have grown up in the Methodist Church. I grew up in Midland, Texas, and graduated from high school in Kingwood, Texas, and then went to Ole Miss. And I connected to campus ministries while I was in college, but never not the Wesley Foundation there at my campus, but others. And while I was in college, I went to be a journalism poli-sci double major. I thought I was going to be a speechwriter, and I felt God calling me to something different about after my freshman year. During my freshman year, I kind of realized that I moved my junior year in high school, that I really hadn't been deeply invested in church in about 2.5 years. And it was kind of a surprise to me because I had always grown up so deeply invested in church. But we went to a lot of churches after I moved, but it was like the place where you are visiting a different church every other week, and you're always the new kid and the visitor, and it always feels awkward, and you never feel at home. And so that's when I found a campus ministry and got involved in a church there. It gave me a community that I really had been lacking, and that I didn't realize how badly I missed it. The way that I like to describe it as like I was a dry sponge that didn't notice that I was dry. And then as soon as I was reinvigorated into those communities and experiencing the love of Christ in those communities again, it was like just being completely doused in water again. And so I'm very thankful for that. I felt called specifically to youth ministry, and so I served in youth ministry for about 12 years in Northwest Houston at John Wesley United Methodist Church. And then through a bunch of different encounters and experiences, I felt like God was, and through trials, I felt like God was pushing me and reforming me in a different direction, which was a real surprise to me because I believed that my call to youth ministry was a lifelong calling. And I had a lot of different experiences. My associate youth director was your boy, Trevor Barnett, who's been on your podcast and that you work with.
Yes.
We worked there together, and had a couple really challenging years, and realized that God had really grown me out of this shell that I had found myself very comfortable in, and was calling me to this pastoral ministry. So I too went to seminary and was working full time at the time, which is why when Epworth came up, it just didn't seem to make sense. Like I have a son, I have a family, I was working full time, I was going to school full time. It wasn't the time to start a new ministry.
Yeah.
But we did end up, we launched in last September, and I didn't graduate till May. So it ended up being kind of a large part of my internship experience was the launch of the Epworth League, which I really appreciated. So I think there's lots of things about Epworth that like it meets the needs of that I didn't have met for me when I'm slightly outside the age range of 18 to 35. So I think in some ways it meets the needs that I didn't have necessarily met for me in my community when I was first out of school, that I would have longed to be connected with peers that were my age. And then in other ways, it is it tries to be a nurturing community that I did experience in the church, but with peers.
Yeah, that's so neat. And it's cool hearing your story and, just, where God's brought you and all this. And well, Katie, it's been great having you on and talking about Epworth League and how, your story and everything like that. As we kind of wrap down the interview, I always like to give the interviewee a opportunity to address the audience, to say whatever is in your heart, how people might get involved with Epworth League, whatever you want to say. The mic and the camera are yours. Go ahead and say whatever is on your heart.
Well, I would just say that if you are a young adult in Houston, that Epworth League is a community that is waiting for you, and that you are welcome anytime. Right now, our league nights are virtual, and so we meet over Zoom at 7 o'clock. Tonight is our last meeting of 2020, but we will pick back up in January with a brand new season of league nights on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. And so you are absolutely always welcome. And that this is a podcast of the serving ministry, and if you're looking for places to serve, that I would always recommend you to the ministries of FAM Houston, because I really believe in the work that they do and that we do across the city to root people in community and give them a place to belong.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Katie. It's been a real treat and pleasure having you on and just talking about all this. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you for your time and for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great. And we're back. Wow. What a great interview that was. I think something that really stood out for me from what Katie was saying was just about how many different interests there are. And it's so true. Like, I don't know if that's just special to young adults, but just everybody. There's just a wide variety of interests. And to hear them have the capacity, the bandwidth, and the desire to open up so many different channels. And she said, she was like, hey, if you have an interest, bring it to us. We'll make it happen for one of our social events. Like, and because, that's how you get people to come in. And, them having such a desire to provide community is something that's so much needed in everybody. We're creatures designed for community, for relationships, and they are seeking to bring the young adults to have them a place where they can have community.
Yes, I think so. And I think also just what she said, it's hard when you're by yourself to go to any event. Houston has so much to offer. And so that they look for things that are going around in Houston and say, hey, come go with us. It's just a hard thing to walk into. And so just that they're meeting that need. And, it's sad to see that really when you look at the suicide rates, it's the highest sometimes in that age group, that loneliness and that lack of connection. And so, I just think how important it is that ministry and that they're meeting that need. And I loved how she expressed how she needed that, but she didn't really even realize she didn't have it till she went back to this ministry. God put it on her heart, and then she realized this is what I needed. And so many times we realize that what God is calling us to is what we actually have lacked at one point.
Yeah, so true. And yeah, it's always cool to hear those stories of how God has been working in their life and brings in all these connections to work through us. And so, yeah, that was really neat. So, as you said, you were over women's ministry at Chapelwood.
Yes, I am.
And, I'd like to give you a little bit of opportunity now to talk about, what that has looked like in the face of a pandemic and what are maybe some adversities that you've faced. And then also what people can be looking forward from women's ministry at Chapelwood moving forward.
So, just really just when this whole pandemic hit, we were in the middle of a lot of planning and a lot of events and a lot of small groups. And so at first it was just learning how to continue in that, knowing that people still needed to connect. So Zoom became my best friend, learning how to connect people through Zoom. We had several events that we actually held by Zoom, game type nights. And so it's interesting, and it was amazing to see how more women were drawn into that normally couldn't because they work or they were gone. And so you're able to do it more because you were at home able to connect that way. And so that was one thing about this that was challenging but rewarding in the same instance. And then also going forward, we're just looking to see, what, the new year is going to bring. We have events like we've always had in women's ministry as far as book clubs. We have small group Bible studies several times a week, and love to get people connected. Small groups through UMW, and then also our big retreats coming up in now April. Usually it's in February. This year we're going to we pushed it forward to April so that we can allow people to feel a little bit more comfortable, and then hopefully be able to get away and just connect again as sisters in Christ. And so really looking forward to that opportunity.
Yeah, it's really neat. And women's ministry, what you've been doing, and all the other ministries that Chapelwood's been doing during the pandemic, it's been, it has been hard, and it's been cool to see the creativity I think that's coming out of this, and that things I hope that continue forward, not just with women's ministry, but everything else at Chapelwood.
Right.
I think the Grow team has done a really good job of pulling their heads together and really thinking, how do we reach people and create community, just like what Katie was talking about. How do we create community for these people and these demographics in this time of a pandemic? So as we wrap down, I would love to turn the mic over to you as you give us our call to action.
All right. So I would say just along those same lines of connection and realizing that people are struggling in so many different ways right now. So, just really to challenge you to pray and ask God to give you the eyes that He sees past what we see. And so maybe it's, as Katie said, that she knew she needed that. What are things that maybe in your life that you thought, man, I wish I had a neighbor, that would ask me if they need anything from the store, or if you are in line at the grocery store and you have no kids with you and you see people with 5 kids behind you, let them go first. Just that eyes to see what God sees that others around us need, and filling that gap with people. And, just taking the time to do that. Slow down a little bit and take the time to see where God's leading you to touch other lives around you.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good word there. And so, yeah, take that to heart, people. Think about that. And as always, this conversation isn't just between me and my mother on screen or whoever the co-host is. It isn't between us and Katie or whoever the guest is. This is a conversation between y'all as well, in that we are inviting you into this topic, what is your why? What is God placing in your heart? What is He calling you to? And hopefully by hearing these stories and hearing about these nonprofits, these ministries that are happening, passions and desires that God has placed on your heart begin to come to the surface, and to explore that thought and that conversation. With that, we'd love